My husband came home one night, rolled up his sleeve, and proudly showed me the tattoo that would eventually end our marriage. It wasn't my name. It wasn't our wedding date. It was another woman's initials. When I asked why another woman deserved a permanent place on his body, he looked me straight in the eyes and said, "She was there for me when you weren't." At the time, I thought the tattoo was the betrayal. I had no idea it was only the first piece of evidence. My name is Lacey Planis, and I was 31 when my 5-year relationship began collapsing over 3 tiny letters on my husband's arm. Mason and I had been married for 3 years, and until then, I honestly believed we were happy. Mason had always loved tattoos. I didn't. Not because I hated them. I simply never wanted one myself. The first time it became an issue was at our engagement party. Mason slipped an arm around my waist and grinned. "You know what we should do?" "What?" "Matching tattoos." I laughed because I thought he was joking. He wasn't. "Come on. Something small. Something that's ours." "You can get whatever tattoo you want," I told him. "I'm just not getting one." His smile faded. "Seriously?" "Seriously." He eventually shrugged, and I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. After we got married, Mason kept bringing it up. Every few months he'd suggest matching tattoos again, and each time my refusal seemed to bother him more. "You'd do it if it mattered enough to you," he said once. "That isn't fair." "Why?" "Because you're turning a tattoo into proof that I love you." He rolled his eyes. I respected what Mason wanted to do with his body. I expected the same respect in return. Things changed after he got promoted and transferred to a new team. That's where he met Jade Winters. At first, Jade was just another coworker. Then suddenly, every conversation involved her. "Jade knows a great tattoo artist." "Jade has an amazing sleeve." "Jade thinks I should get something symbolic." I noticed how often he mentioned her, but I didn't want to become suspicious simply because my husband had a female friend. Then one evening, Mason casually said, "Jade thinks it's weird you won't get tattooed." I looked at him. "Why are you discussing me with Jade? She asked why we don't have matching tattoos." "And?" He smirked. "She thinks you're scared. She actually joked that maybe you're not woman enough to handle it." I stared at him. "And you let her talk about your wife like that?" "Oh, come on, Lacey, it's a joke." "I don't find it funny." "You're being insecure." Then he walked away. A few days later, Mason came home late with a strange smile on his face. "How was shopping?" I asked. "Pretty good." He rolled up his sleeve. There was a fresh tattoo on his forearm. 2 Chinese symbols. "Strength and independence," he said proudly. Then I noticed 3 letters underneath. J. My stomach tightened. "What does JW stand for?" He hesitated. "Jade Winters." I stared at him. "You tattooed another woman's initials on your body? Don't make it weird." "I'm making it weird?" She helped me choose the design. She introduced me to the artist and stayed through the appointment. "So you tattooed her initials on yourself?" She supported me. Then he looked directly at me. "She was there for me when you weren't." That sentence hurt more than the tattoo. I wasn't there because I didn't want a tattoo. You refused to share the experience with me. Jade didn't. I finally understood. This wasn't just something Mason wanted. It was punishment. "Get the initials removed." His expression hardened. "No. Mason." My body, Lacey. For years he'd pressured me about mine. Now suddenly bodily autonomy mattered. "You know this is disrespectful." "No. You're jealous." I stopped arguing and started paying attention. Mason was suddenly always on his phone. Jade called at night. He'd smile at messages and turn the screen away whenever I walked past. One evening, after hearing him laughing with her for nearly 20 minutes, I finally asked, "Why are you talking to Jade this much?" "She's my friend." "You have her initials tattooed on your arm." "Oh my God. Not this again." "I'm asking a reasonable question." "No. You're being insecure." That became his favorite word whenever I noticed something he couldn't explain. Then the late nights started. Extra work. drinks with coworkers, last-minute meetings. One evening, Mason came home smelling like perfume. Not mine. Where were you? Drinks with coworkers. You smell like another woman's perfume. For half a second, panic crossed his face. Then he shrugged. One of the women probably hugged me goodbye. I wanted to believe him, but by then, my gut was screaming at me. A few mornings later, he spent nearly an hour getting ready for work. New shirt, hair carefully styled, cologne he normally saved for weekends. Big meeting? I asked. Can't a guy want to look good? I didn't argue. The pieces were already fitting together. Then one Friday, Mason told me his team had a work event. Don't wait up. Around 9 that night, I couldn't settle down, so I went for a drive. I wasn't searching for him. But while passing a bar Mason and I used to visit, I saw his car parked outside. I pulled over. Maybe his coworkers were all inside. Maybe I was being paranoid. I almost drove away. Instead, I walked in. The bar was crowded, but I spotted Mason immediately. Corner booth. Jade was beside him, not across from him. Beside him. Their legs were touching. She leaned toward his ear and whispered something. Mason laughed. Then Jade placed her hand on his arm, right beside her initials. My stomach dropped. Mason looked up. His face went pale. Jade followed his stare and quickly moved her hand. I walked toward them. Lacey, Mason started. I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I simply looked at him and asked, Is this the work event? Mason froze. Jade stared down at the table. Neither answered. That silence told me everything. I nodded. Got it. I turned around. Lacey, wait, I can explain. I kept walking. He followed me outside. It's not what you think. I looked through the window at Jade, then at the initials on his arm. You're right. For a second, he looked relieved. Then I said, It's worse. I walked away. By the time Mason realized I wasn't coming back, I was already driving home. For weeks, he'd convinced me I was insecure, paranoid, controlling. Now I knew I wasn't imagining anything. I pulled into our driveway, walked upstairs, and dragged my suitcase from the closet. Then I started packing. Because Mason thought he still had time to invent another explanation. He didn't. And when he finally came home, I had one question left for him. One I wasn't sure I wanted answered. By the time Mason came home, my suitcase was already beside the front door. He walked in, saw it, and stopped. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he quietly asked, You're leaving? I looked at him. What did you expect? Lacey, what you saw wasn't... Don't. He went silent. I've spent weeks listening to you tell me I'm insecure. You tattooed her initials on your body. You lied about where you were tonight. And then I found you sitting practically on top of her. We were just talking. I laughed. That's really what you're going with? His jaw tightened. You're blowing this out of proportion. There it was again. Even after getting caught, he still wanted me to believe my reaction was the problem. I picked up my suitcase. As I reached the door, Mason grabbed my arm. Please. There were tears in his eyes. For 1 second, the man standing in front of me looked like the husband I'd loved. Then I saw the tattoo on the arm holding me. Jay. I pulled away. This isn't on me, Mason. You made your choices. I walked out. My friend. Rachel let me stay at her place while I figured out what came next. When I told her everything, she stared at me in disbelief. He actually tattooed her initials on himself? Yep. And then called you insecure? Also, yep. Rachel shook her head. That's not insecurity, Lacey. That's eyesight. It was the first time I'd laughed in days. Mason started texting almost immediately. I'm sorry. Can we talk? Please come home. You don't understand what happened. I ignored most of them. What explanation could possibly make another woman's initials disappear from his skin? A few days later, someone knocked on Rachel's door. She wasn't home. I opened it. Mason stood outside in the rain. His hair was soaked, his clothes dripping, and his eyes were red. I need 5 minutes. I should have closed the door. Instead, I let him inside. He sat on the couch while I remained standing. For almost a minute, neither of us spoke. Finally, Mason whispered, "I messed up." I said nothing. I never meant for things to get this far. That sentence caught my attention. This far? He looked down. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. I know. No, Mason. You didn't hurt me once. You made choice after choice. You let Jade insult me. You tattooed her initials on yourself. You lied about the calls, the late nights, the bar. He wiped his face. I was stupid. There was still one question hanging between us. The question I'd been afraid to ask. I sat across from him. Did you sleep with her? Mason froze. That tiny hesitation was enough. But I needed to hear it. Answer me. His eyes filled with tears. Then he nodded. Yes. Everything inside me went strangely quiet. When? He stared at the floor. A few weeks ago. Before the bar. Before the perfume. Maybe even before the tattoo. I suddenly realized how many conversations we'd had while he already knew the truth. Every time he'd called me insecure, he knew. Every time he'd accused me of jealousy, he knew. Every time he'd climbed into bed beside me, he knew. I stood and walked toward the window. Behind me, Mason started crying. Lacey, I'm sorry. I didn't turn around. Did the tattoo happen before or after you slept with her? Silence. That was my answer too. Please, he whispered. I don't want to lose you. I finally faced him. You didn't lose me. You traded me. His face crumpled. And now it didn't work out the way you imagined. He tried to speak, but I shook my head. You should go. Can we at least try counseling? No. Lacey? No. For once, my answer didn't require his approval. Mason slowly stood, grabbed his jacket, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he looked back. I really did love you. I believed him. That was almost worse. Because apparently loving me hadn't stopped him from betraying me. The divorce moved faster than I expected. We didn't have children, and there wasn't much worth turning into a war. I kept the house. Mason moved in with a friend. We signed the papers. Our conversations became short and painfully polite. People who'd once discussed vacations, anniversaries, and growing old together were now discussing bank accounts and furniture. When the divorce was finalized, I expected to feel devastated. Instead, I felt relieved. For the first time in months, I didn't have to wonder where Mason was. I didn't have to analyze his phone calls. I didn't have to smell his shirt when he came home. I could breathe again. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. A few weeks later, Mason started texting me again. Hope you're doing okay. Then, I've been thinking about everything. I ignored him. Until one night, he sent a message long enough that I had to scroll. Things with Jade weren't going well. Apparently, once our marriage was gone, their exciting secret relationship became something much less exciting. They argued constantly. Jade didn't trust him. Mason didn't trust her. I almost laughed at the irony. Then came the final line. Can we meet? I need closure. I should have said no. Instead, I agreed to one coffee. When Mason walked into the cafe, he looked different. Tired, worn down. He sat across from me. Thank you for coming. I nodded. He stared at his hands. I'm sorry, Lacey. I know. I've been thinking about why I did everything. I waited. I wasn't happy. There it was. The explanation. We were drifting apart, he continued. I felt like you didn't want the same things anymore. I stared at him. So, you cheated. I'm not saying it was right. You're trying to explain it like something happened to you. His eyes dropped. I felt alone. You had a wife. He looked up. A wife who would have listened if you'd actually talked to her. Mason said nothing. You didn't tell me you were unhappy. You told Jade. You didn't ask me to fix anything. You went behind my back and then made me feel crazy when I noticed. His eyes filled again. I know. And that tattoo? He instinctively glanced at his forearm. The initials were still there. I almost smiled at the absurdity. You wanted to hurt me with it. He didn't deny it. That silence gave me more closure than his apology ever could. I loved you, Mason, I said. If you'd told me something was wrong, I would have fought for us. His voice cracked. I know that now. But you never gave me the chance. A tear rolled down his cheek. I made a mistake. No. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. What you did was a series of decisions. He looked completely defeated. Then he whispered, I don't know what to do now. And suddenly, I understood why he'd asked to meet. This wasn't closure. He wanted comfort. From me. After destroying our marriage. I leaned back. That's not my problem anymore. His expression changed. Lacey, you made your choices. Now you have to live with them. We sat in silence. Eventually, Mason stood. Thanks for meeting me. I nodded. He walked toward the door. I watched him leave without feeling the urge to follow. For the first time, his regret didn't feel like my responsibility. I thought that conversation had finally closed the door between us. Then, several months later, I received a message from a number I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was spam. Until I read the first sentence. Hi Lacey, this is Jade. And somehow, the woman whose initials were still tattooed on my ex-husband's arm suddenly wanted to talk to me. 6 months after the divorce, I barely recognized the woman I'd been when I first saw those initials on Mason's arm. I was sleeping better, working more, seeing friends I'd neglected during the final months of my marriage. Most importantly, I wasn't constantly questioning myself anymore. I didn't check anyone's phone. I didn't wake up wondering where Mason was. I didn't have to analyze every late arrival or convince myself that perfume on his shirt had some innocent explanation. For the first time in months, my life felt quiet. Then Jade texted me. Hi Lacey. This is Jade. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I think you deserve to know some things. I stared at the message. Part of me wanted to delete it immediately. Then another message arrived. Things with Mason aren't what I thought they'd be. I almost laughed. Apparently, once I was out of the picture, their relationship collapsed quickly. According to Jade, Mason became jealous and demanding. He questioned where she was, who she was texting, and whether he could trust her. The irony was almost impressive. The man who'd spent months calling me insecure was now doing exactly what he'd accused me of doing. Then Jade wrote, I thought things would be different once you two were divorced. That sentence told me everything. Whatever she'd believed about their relationship, reality hadn't matched the fantasy. Sneaking around had probably made everything exciting. But once there was no wife to lie to, no secret meetings, and no forbidden relationship to romanticize, they were left with each other. And apparently, neither of them liked what they found. Jade sent another message. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just understand some things now that I didn't before. For a moment, I wondered what she wanted from me. Forgiveness? Validation? Maybe she wanted me to tell her Mason had always been difficult, so she wouldn't have to admit she'd willingly helped destroy a marriage for a man she couldn't even trust. I typed a response, deleted it, typed another. Finally, I sent, I'm not the person you should be discussing Mason with. Then I blocked her. It felt strangely good. Their relationship wasn't my problem. A few days later, Mason called. I hadn't heard his voice since the coffee shop. I almost let it go to voicemail. Curiosity won. Hello? Lacey. His voice sounded shaky. What do you want, Mason? He went quiet before saying, Jade and I are basically over. I closed my eyes. And you're telling me because? I don't know. I just needed someone to talk to. That almost made me laugh. You should call a friend. Lacey, please. I stayed silent. Then he said the words I suspected were coming. I made a mistake. We've already established that. No, I mean everything. Jade, the tattoo, losing you. His voice cracked. I didn't realize how much I needed you until you were gone. Months earlier, that would have hurt. Maybe I would have mistaken it for the apology I'd been waiting for. Now it only made something painfully clear. He didn't miss me. He missed what I provided. Stability, loyalty, a home, someone who trusted him before he gave her reasons not to. You don't miss me, Mason. What? You miss being married to someone who made your life comfortable. That's not true. Then why are you calling now? He didn't answer. Why didn't you call me when things with Jade were going well? Silence. Exactly. I thought things would be different with her, he finally whispered. And they weren't. No. That's unfortunate. He sounded almost stunned by how calm I was. Do you ever think about us? Sometimes. Do you miss me? I considered lying. Instead, I told him the truth. I miss who I thought you were. He stopped talking. That was the difference between us now. Mason was mourning what he'd lost. I had already mourned what I'd discovered never truly existed. Then he surprised me. I've thought about getting the tattoo removed. I looked down at my phone. 6 months earlier, hearing that would have meant everything to me. Now, it meant nothing. That's your decision. I thought you'd want to know. Why? Another silence. Because somewhere inside him, Mason still believed removing Jade's initials might erase what they represented. But the tattoo had never been the real problem. You could remove every drop of ink from your arm, I told him, and it wouldn't change what happened. I know. Do you? His voice became quieter. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. There it was again. For months he'd made his problems mine. His unhappiness, his attraction to Jade, his guilt, and now, his regret. Not anymore. You figure it out. Lacey, I can't rescue you from the consequences of choices you made. He started crying quietly, and surprisingly, I felt sorry for him. But feeling sorry for someone isn't the same as wanting them back. You should move on, I said. I have. Then I ended the call. I sat there staring at my phone for a few seconds. I expected guilt. Instead, I felt relief. That was the last real conversation Mason and I ever had. Afterward, my life became quieter in the best possible way. I reconnected with old friends. Rachel and I started having dinner every Thursday, something we'd stopped doing while my marriage was falling apart. I picked up hobbies I'd forgotten I enjoyed. I changed a few things around the house, too. Nothing dramatic. New curtains, different furniture arrangement, fresh paint in the bedroom, small things. But every change made the house feel less like the place Mason had left, and more like mine. Eventually, I even started dating again. Nothing serious. And I liked it that way. The first time a man asked me out, I nearly said no automatically. Then I realized I wasn't afraid of dating. I was afraid of trusting the wrong person again. So I stopped putting pressure on myself. Coffee could just be coffee. Dinner could just be dinner. I didn't need another relationship to prove I'd recovered from the last one. For once, I wasn't searching for someone to replace Mason. I was simply living. And slowly, that became enough. Looking back, I understand something I couldn't see when everything first happened. That tattoo didn't destroy my marriage. The marriage was already breaking underneath the surface. The tattoo simply made the disrespect impossible to ignore. For months, Mason convinced me that I was insecure, because I noticed the obvious. He called me jealous while protecting another woman. He called me controlling while pressuring me to ignore my own boundaries. He made me question my instincts while actively proving them right. And for a while, I let him. That's probably the part that took me longest to forgive. Not him, myself. But eventually, I understood that trusting my husband hadn't made me stupid. What mattered was what I did, once the truth became impossible to deny. I walked away. And walking away taught me something more valuable than any apology Mason could have given me. You can't control whether someone betrays you. You can't force someone to respect you. And you can't love someone enough to make them choose loyalty. But you can decide what happens after they show you who they are. Mason made his choice. Jade made hers. And eventually, I made mine. I chose myself. Funny enough, Mason once told me those Chinese symbols tattooed on his arm meant what strength and independence. Maybe they did, just not for him. Because in the end, I was the one who learned exactly what those words meant.